There are moments in life when you know, in your bones, you should not be where you are, but you stay anyway. You call it loyalty. You call it grace. You call it love. But deep down in the quiet hours when you can't lie to yourself, you know it's fear. You know it's the silence you inherited, the tolerance you mistook for maturity. But psychology, real psychology, teaches us something brutal and true. When you accept what erodes you piece by piece, you become complicit in the betrayal of your own soul. Carl Jung warned us, not in dramatic ultimatums or fiery language, but through a subtle, deep call to awareness. There are behaviors, patterns, masks disguised as personality traits that we must never accept. Because when you tolerate certain shadows, they don't just darken your world, they become your identity. And by the time you notice, you're gone. Jung devoted his life to understanding the unconscious, the thick, tangled web underneath our conscious mind that shapes our choices, our pain, our relationships. He warned us that the things we refuse to confront inside ourselves will emerge outside of us as fate. And nowhere is this truer than in the behaviors of the people we allow into our innermost world. The person who plays with your emotions and calls it love. The one who refuses to apologize and calls it confidence. The one who blames you for their chaos and calls it just being real. These aren't quirks. These aren't just red flags. These are warnings, psychological landmines. And if you live long enough, if you've been hurt deeply enough times, you realize some wounds aren't accidents. They're habits someone else refuses to break. Behaviors that people repeat not because they don't know better, but because you keep letting them. You may think you're being compassionate. You may think they'll change. But Jung taught that what we don't make conscious will rule our lives. So the question becomes, how much of what you've tolerated did you call love, when in fact it was trauma acting out its memory one more time? There is a type of emotional control that sneaks up on you. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It moves the chess pieces slowly. One day it's a guilt trip masked as concern. The next it's the silent treatment. Then the cold looks, the unspoken punishments, the constant questioning of your sanity when you try to speak your truth. The manipulation doesn't step on your throat. It lets you suffocate yourself. And you thank them for the air they never gave you. This is not love. It is warfare. Psychological, intimate warfare. And the casualties are your dignity and self-worth. Jung warned that those who do not face their own darkness will project it onto others. Emotional manipulators do exactly that. They feed on your empathy, your silence, your need to be understood, and turn it into a weapon. They don't want connection. They want control. And they only grow bolder the more you excuse them. Their sentences are polished with phrases like, "You're too sensitive. You always overreact. I didn't mean it like that." But what they mean is this: I will not change. You will adapt. And slowly, you do. The second most eroding behavior you must never tolerate is the refusal to take accountability. This is the person who never says I was wrong. The one who spins every confrontation into a courtroom where they're the plaintiff, the victim, and the judge. When you try to bring up something that hurt, they pivot. You're suddenly the problem. Your reaction becomes the crime. You walk away feeling confused, guilty, maybe even ashamed, wondering if maybe you really were overreacting. That's not a disagreement. That's emotional gaslighting. And it's a cousin of projection, one of Jung's core concepts. People project when they cannot or will not face themselves. Their guilt, their shame, their inadequacy becomes too much to bear. So they deposit it elsewhere, into you. And if you're the kind who grew up walking on emotional eggshells, you're the perfect candidate. It feels familiar. If you were blamed for things beyond your control as a child, you're likely to apologize for things you didn't do today just to keep the peace. But peace built on self-suppression is not peace, it's performance. And performers burn out. You must never confuse someone's inability to be accountable for strength. It is not strength. It is cowardice masquerading as confidence. True strength is the person who says, I hurt you. I see that. I'll do better. Anything less is not correction, it's corrosion. Then there's the disease of chronic disrespect. The little jabs, the condescending tone, the mockery of what matters to you. The way they listen when you speak, not to understand, but to interrupt. Disrespect rarely announces itself. Often it arrives wrapped in sarcasm. Don't take it so seriously. You can't take a joke? No, the joke is a mask, a shoddy disguise to cover disdain. Jung taught that the shadow, the repressed, hidden parts of a person, often leaks out as contempt. Be very careful around people who secretly envy the light inside you, because that envy curdles fast, and you'll know it not through their unkindness, but through their indifference. Disrespect allows them to feel superior, even if only for a moment, especially when they've failed to evolve. Mocking your growth gives them a temporary illusion of relevance. But here's something Jung would scream from the clouds if he had to. What you tolerate, you train. If someone gets comfortable belittling you, and you keep returning, it tells them they're still important. Don't let it move that far, because by the time the insults become open wounds, the damage will take years to unwind. There is betrayal that breaks hearts, and betrayal that breaks realities. The kind Jung warned most about is what I call sacred betrayal, where trust is shattered and then rebuilt with lies. It's not that they betrayed you, it's what they did after. The manipulative apology, the tears designed to absolve rather than repair, the kind voice wrapped around the same dagger. Over time, this cycle becomes its own trauma loop. Pain, apology, brief honeymoon, repeat. Your body starts releasing cortisol before you've even been hurt because it knows what's coming. Jung didn't just speak of betrayal as relational. He saw betrayal as an invitation to become conscious. When you're constantly forgiving what has no intention of changing, you become an accomplice in your own exploitation. And eventually you start to erase yourself. You mute your needs. You sacrifice your softness. You rehearse reactions in your mind to avoid another explosion. That is not love. That is survival on someone else's battleground. I want you to hear this loudly. Anyone who hurts you and then rushes you to trust them again is not sorry. They're impatient. Impatient to get back to a world where you question yourself, not them. Protect your trust like it's sacred, because it is. And the ones who deserve it will never ask you to lower your standards to keep them. Then comes a behavior we rarely talk about, but might be the deepest soul wound of all. Emotional abandonment. They don't hit you. They don't insult you. They just disappear while physically present. You share your dream and they meet you with silence. You cry and they turn up the volume on the TV. You ache and they look through you. Some people think trauma is only done to you. But Jung would argue sometimes trauma happens because of what never happens. The love that never came. The comfort that never arrived. The presence that stayed absent. You try to earn them. You adjust yourself so much that you forget your original shape. You wonder what's wrong with you. But emotional neglect isn't about your worth. It's about their walls. Their inability to be truly seen, so they learn to never see. It's generational. It's reflex. It's tragic. And it is not your job to break that cycle by accepting hunger as home. Then there's the liar. Not the accidental one, but the chronic creator of illusions. The ones who lie not because they fear hurting you, but because they fear being seen. Jung would call this the inflated persona, the curated image, the mask tightly strapped to a wounded ego. These people sell you a dream and hide the nightmare. They lie about feelings. They lie about intentions. They make promises they can't even remember, because their word is just another tool of manipulation. When someone lies consistently, it fractures your sense of reality. You begin to question your own memory, your own clarity. That's not just dishonesty. That's psychological abuse. And it's not something you should ever adjust to. When truth dies, trust follows. And without trust, all you have is a story you're telling yourself about them, while they write their own scripts behind your back. And finally, Perhaps the hardest thing Jung ever taught us, the one we pretend not to hear. You must never tolerate the erasure of your own self. There are people who do not love you. They love the use of you. Your softness, your sex, your potential, your social status, your emotional labor. They extract and then turn around and call you selfish the moment you ask for reciprocity. That's not love. That's colonization. Jung's idea of individuation, the process of becoming truly ourselves, is impossible in relationships where you are forced to become a fragment of who you are. When you are molded, silenced, redirected into something that makes them comfortable. You were not born to be a character in someone else's story. You were not meant to shrink yourself to be digestible. You were meant to devour the life that calls to you, and anyone who tries to shrink your appetite does not love the real you. This is your wake-up call, to stop tolerating people who treat your healing like an inconvenience, to stop explaining your value to people committed to misunderstanding you, to stop betraying yourself just to feel like someone stayed. Because Jung would say, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. And perhaps this pain, the pain of letting go, of waking up, of standing alone, is the pain that saves you. And when you do, you'll notice the silence changes. It doesn't echo anymore. It sings. If you've made it this far, I want to know who truly understood the message. Leave the phrase individuation requires boundaries in the comments, and let's see how many of you really grasp what it means to move with the strategy. If this video made you question something, if it made you see things from a different angle, like and subscribe because this is just the beginning. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, to betray yourself is the first betrayal you must unlearn.